Hi, Algebra 2. Up to this point, we've been looking at equations and solutions to equations. Now we're going to start looking at equations with their graphs. Here we go. Hopefully when you read this problem about Claire, you started thinking about equations like we've been seeing so far. So I'm going to write this out with $6 per pound for almonds and $9 per pound for figs. And that's going to equal the $75 she spent. So in number 1, if she bought 2 pounds of almonds, I'm going to plug in that 2 there for A. So I have 6 times 2 plus 9 times F equals 75. Okay, over here I've rewritten my equation and I have simplified 6 times 2 to be 12. And so now I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides of my equation and I'm left with 9F equals 63. I'm going to divide both sides by 9 and I end up with F equals 7. So if she buys 2 pounds of almonds, she needs to buy 7 pounds of figs, 7 pounds of figs in order to spend $75. In number 2, now if she buys 1 pound of figs, how many pounds of almonds does she need to buy? So I started with my equation. I plugged in 1 for F, or 1 pound of figs, and now I'm going to simplify that. 9 times 1 is just 1. And now I have an equation that I can solve. So I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. And I'm going to divide both sides by 6. And I get A equals 11. In other words, if she buys 1 pound of figs, she needs to buy 11 pounds of almonds to spend $75. In number 3 here's where our equation comes in. And we've already been working with that, so there it is. Just remember that as a solution to this equation, you would need both a number for A and a number for F that makes it true. So now here's a graph. This is the graph of the equation that we've been working with. Notice that almonds is on the x-axis. So if I was to type this into Desmos, I would need to use x there. Desmos will only use x and y to graph lines, not other letters. So you need to figure out what's on your x-axis and what's on your y-axis. My figs are on my y-axis, so that's where I would put my y. So if I was going to type this into Desmos, this would be the equation I would need to use. When you're looking at these points on the line, you can look down at the axes to see what it's telling you. So point A is telling you that if you had 2 pounds of almonds and 7 pounds of figs, that it would add up to $75. C tells you that if you had 6.5 pounds of almonds and 4 pounds of figs, that would add up to $75. B is telling you if you had 11 pounds of almonds and 1 pound of figs, that it would add up to $75. D, on the other hand, is not on the line. So that's telling you that if you buy 1 pound of almonds and 1 pound of figs, it is not going to add up to $75 because it is not on that line. After 3 weeks, I know that we started with 175. We're going to add on 125 3 times, or 125 times 3, and I get $850. In B, I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to start with 1,350 minus 475, because that's what she had to start with. So I know that over the weeks, she's going to put in $875, and if she's doing $125 every week, I'm going to divide, and I see that that's going to be 7 weeks. In C, you're going to write an equation that represents the relationship. So we're putting in $125 every week. So I'm going to use W for weeks, plus that 475 she started with. And we're going to know that that will tell us how much is in her savings, or S. Now we're going to graph this using Desmos. I wrote our equation over here. Remember when we use Desmos, it can only handle X's and Y's. And so instead of weeks, I'm going to put X. And then instead of S for my savings, I'm going to put Y. Okay, once I type that into my calculator, my line looks very strange right now. You're going to have to pinch and zoom on your Y-axis because our numbers are kind of large. Pinch and zoom and then move it around until you get to see your line decently. And I'm going to go a little bit more right about there. So remember here, X is representing the number of weeks. That was what we used for weeks right there in the equation, and the y-axis is telling us how much is in her savings. The problem tells us that we want to put in a point or label a point that shows us how much she had after 3 weeks. So we found out earlier that after 3 weeks, we're going to put this in like a coordinate point, so with parentheses. After 3 weeks, she had $850. So when we put that in, it should show up right on the line. The other point we're going to put in is how many weeks it took her to get $1,350. And we remember that that took 7 weeks. And so I'm going to put in 7, comma, 1,350. And again, it should end up right on the line. Move your graph around if you can't see it. And in part D, we want to know how long is it going to take her to get to $7,000. So I'm going to keep zooming out until I start seeing 7,000 on my y-axis. And there it is, way up there. And I can touch on the graph and see the points, but it's kind of hard to get to exactly 7,000. You might be able to do it and see what your x value is. There it is at 52.2 weeks. So you can do it that way. The other way is that if I know I want my y value to be 7,000, I can just type in y equals 7,000. It's going to put another line on there, but where they cross, I can click on that point and it tells me 52.2 weeks it's going to take. Number 2 is another really good one for practice. If you'd like to do it, you can get an extra stamp and make sure that you graph it using your Desmos calculator, and you can just show me before you get your stamp on that. All right, Algebra 2, nice job making it through and working through lessons 4 and 5. Hopefully these things with the equations and graphs are making sense to you. If they're not, make sure that you're asking questions. Ask questions of a neighbor, ask questions of me, send me questions, whatever it might take. So keep working hard, guys. Keep up the good work.